This was also stained, but this one I used my water-based stain, and I watered it down with water to give it a much more whitewashed look than this one. So you can still see the maple grain, some of the color of the wood, the staining of the spalting, but it has a very slight tint, almost pink. Yep.
So when you're using the water-based, you said the grain comes up.
Yes.
So that you're sanding between your stain coats?
You can't sand it back. The stain is totally absorbed into the wood. It penetrates the wood. So when you sand the surface, you're just sort of sanding away any flux that was raised with the wood grain.
And you mentioned that you use tung oil in one of the mixtures. Do you still need to finish with like a poly over top of it? Or
Nope.
Are you still just using more tung oil to get the gloss?
If I mixed it with tung oil, these 3 pieces I actually mixed with tung oil itself as the solvent. So with this, I put the blue straight into tung oil, 50-50. This one I put the red into tung oil, 50-50, but since tung oil is an amber color, it's yellow, it makes this turn orange.
So do you still finish it if you don't use tung oil?
I would put tung oil over top, yeah. So even if I used a stain that I put a finish on it, you can still put finish over top. Even if it's a water-based, an oil-based, water-based, oil-based, or any sort of solvent-based stain, you can always put finish over top. If it's a solvent-based stain that I haven't mixed with a finish, it's good to allow the solvent to evaporate first. If it's mixed with a finish, it doesn't matter. The finish will cure the solvent and the stain into the wood, and then you can just keep applying your finishes or whatever finish you like. I like tung oil, so I keep going till I get the shine I like. I use almost like a French polish technique when I'm finishing my stuff. And so that's with stains and dyes. I talked a little bit more about stains, so they're pretty easy to apply. All you need to do is stick a little bit in your container and you paint it on. It's not really going to absorb differently unless you're using a pine, a spruce, a fir, but in woodworking and wood turning we don't necessarily work with pine unless we're making furniture that's going to be painted or bar top finished epoxy. That gives it durability. So these, you can buy a lot of these paints, like the acrylic paints. I don't use latex paints because finishes won't stick to latex. Finishes will stick to stains, solvent-based stains, acrylic paints, and water-based paints because the solvents and the water evaporate, leaving behind the color. Also, if you had a wax finish of some sort, you could not put a finish over wax. If you've waxed it or mineral oil and waxed it, that's it. That's all you can do. You can't put an oil or a curing oil over top because you're going to seal that moisture in, as well as the beeswax won't allow it to stick to the...
Is there anything you can use on wax to dilute it before you can?
You can hit it with a wood stripper, and you can take off the wax off the surface, but it was mixed with mineral oil. So the mineral oil has seeped into the wood, and mineral oil doesn't dry. So you would actually be sealing that moisture in the wood, which in the sun, if it's sitting on a table in the sun, it'll heat up and boil that moisture in the middle of the wood, and your bowl will explode, and there will be a bang in your house, almost like a water pipe bursting. Probably scare the hell out of you, and you're like, what's happening? But it's the bowl that blew up. So, since I'm doing a box, and I'm going to create this effect, this was actually a mixture of paints and stains. I used a metallic blue paint, and then a black paint on the rim. I always keep one surface wood because I want it to look like wood and be wood, and people be like, oh, it looks like pottery or glass or whatever, but oh, it's wood. right? So it gives them a visual of both worlds. That was just painted, and that was sort of an experiment, but the bottom was stained with the yellow stain, so you can see the wood grain and the burning. I was just playing around with that piece. I don't know how much I like it, but the eye is in the eye of the beholder. There are things that I have made that have been quite hideous, and I think are the ugliest thing I've ever made, but it's the first thing to sell. I'm like, really? You want that? There's a clean edge?
Yeah, like, no, all black and pink.
Yeah. Oh, to do that, you have to have a very steady hand
Yes.
and a very sharp paintbrush. Either a very fine tipped paintbrush, which they would do pinstriping on motorbikes and cars with, or you would have a piece like this, and I don't come from the rim in, because any excess that's on the brush has just been used and wiped off like a squeegee on the inside of the rim, so it would make the rim quite messy.
So you're doing it when it's off the lathe then?
Yes, all the coloring and staining I do off the lathe,
On stage.
because, on my couch, yeah, because I don't want any finishes, any solvents, any colors, any dyes all over my lathe. I don't put finishes on my lathe, I put finishes on my wood. And with the spinning and the centrifugal force, some of the dyes will spray all over the place. So it'll be all over me, all over my walls, all over my lathe, and I don't want that. So, if I do put finish on the lathe, I do have a piece of wood that is a piece of plywood, and I have a piece of wood that's cut to the inside thickness of my bedway, and it is glued on right here. That sits right on my bedway, right over the bowl that I'm putting tung oil, linseed oil, walnut oil on, just to seal it before I take it off the lid. Because I've seen some people using finishes here, and it goes everywhere. It's all over the lathe, it's on the bedways, it's on this, everywhere. So it would be a good project maybe to make them, and people can put them over the bedway when they apply their linseed oil. There's many different paints you can use. There's opaque paints, there's staining paints. Stain paints will give you a whitewashed look. You don't have to dilute it. Opaque stains will give you a solid color. You can cut that back with solvents, but you don't have to, because you can buy opaque stains and translucent stains. These are premium paint stains. So with these, when I stain them and dye them, I can still see the wood grain. The acrylic paints that you get at the dollar store and whatnot, they're opaque, so they're quite solid. You can buy individual acrylic paints at, say, Walmart, the dollar store, Amazon. My acrylic paints I do buy at Walmart, the dollar store, but my premium paint stains, which are these, I get at Michael's. And you can buy them in sets, or you can buy them individually. A set is a good idea because you'll have multiple shades of the same color. And really, when you're doing marbling or a marbling effect, you do need multiple shades of that same color to give it the highs and the lows of the depth of the colors. Okay? You can get metallic paints. Metallic paints are paints that have metallics or gold flake, almost like a candy paint they would put on cars. You can also buy those. But, and spray paints. You can buy spray paints. These are what I would use for that water droplet effect that we saw weeks ago. You would paint, you would basically do a bowl, and you wouldn't carve the inside of the bowl. You would paint it one primary color, and then you would have two different shades of blue. You would do one shade, you would put water droplets on the primary color, and then you would do a dark paint from this side, And then you would do a light paint from this side, which gives you the shadows to create the water droplets. The water evaporates, leaving the paint behind, giving you the water droplet effect. Now I'll get into showing you any questions about that, or paints or stains. You can buy aniline stains from different suppliers. You can get them on Amazon, you can get them at woodchuckers, you can get them in powders, and you can get them in liquids. For the most part, I use these for epoxies, but they will also dissolve in solvents.
Earlier you mentioned you have a bottle there where you put all of your solvent stuff in when you're done with it. Is there an issue chemically with putting acetone and methyl hydrate and everything?
I don't mix them together because I don't want an accidental case of, like ammonia and bleach, you can make mustard gas. But I wouldn't want to make any sort of gas that would be noxious for me in my basement. So if I used acetone, I would just put it in an acetone container that I use for acetone stains. This one is strictly for mineral spirits or Varsol. They're both paint thinners. Methyl hydrate is a totally different chemical composition, and I wouldn't mix that with anything. Okay.
Where do you get the denatured alcohol?
This denatured alcohol, one of the members gave it to me years ago. He had excess, and he gave me this little container. And I've just been using it ever since. I've had it maybe 3 years, 4 years, and I've only used that much. Denatured alcohol, it's quite hard to get in Canada because it's a bubble wrap world now. We are not allowed to have VOCs and stinky paints. So they're sort of weaning them out of the market. But there is a place in Toronto. It's a chemical plant, manufacturer and distributor. You can actually walk in there and you can get them. I don't exactly know where it is and the name of it because I haven't been there, but if anyone's interested, I could contact my buddy at the Unplugged Workshop, and he knows exactly where it is. It's right around the corner from his workshop. Yeah, we could do a group buy. But if you don't want to use denatured alcohol, the methyl hydrate, the Varsol, and the mineral spirits works the exact same. They're all evaporating into the air. So you don't necessarily need denatured, but you can use denatured. So this one I painted today. The moment I finished it, I was like, oh, it's a Spider-Man box. And I didn't want to change it in any way, but I need a piece to demo, so I'll use that one as my Spider-Man box. So when we start doing marbling and texturing, since I have the big sponges for my bowls and stuff, I wouldn't be able to use them on such a small box. So today I sat on my couch with my pad of foam, and I cut out a whole bunch of different shapes. Rectangles, triangles, teardrops, equilateral triangles, all kinds of different. I don't know if you can see them. Put them on here.
Right there, just on the table.
It's a circle, an octagon, some triangles, some...
Are those not too hard though, a surface cave to use to get the actual impression on the piece, or do you find softer works better? Or?
I find it's perfect.
Okay.
You can use harder stuff or softer stuff, it's just your preference. If you have, it's really all I know. This is the only product I've used for making my own sponges. But it works well. Yeah. So the ones I'm going to use today are the teardrop and one of the triangles.